My beloved child, don't skip this fictional inspirational story because what you are about to hear is not a prophecy about your life, it is a story about truth, redemption, and the courage to make the right choice before it is too late. Stay till the end because every decision made in the darkness eventually meets the light. The night begins with a restless sleep. In this fictional story, the main character dreams of standing alone on a quiet road while heavy clouds gather overhead. A gentle but powerful voice calls out, "My child, wake up. This is an urgent moment. Do not let fear keep you from the truth." The voice is filled with compassion rather than anger, and it echoes through the silence until the character suddenly awakens with a racing heart. The entire day feels different. Small moments seem to carry unexpected meaning. A stranger speaks about honesty. A radio broadcast discusses justice and responsibility. An old friend unexpectedly says, "The truth always finds its way into the light." None of these events predict the future, but together they encourage the character to reflect on the life they have been living. Listen carefully, because this changes everything. The greatest emergency in this fictional story is not that someone knows a secret. It is that the character has been ignoring their own conscience for far too long. As evening falls, memories begin returning one after another. Promises left unfulfilled. Conversations that should have ended with honesty. Opportunities to admit mistakes that were postponed because fear seemed easier than truth. The character realizes that running from responsibility has become a heavier burden than facing it. Sitting quietly by the window, they whisper, "If I have done wrong, give me the courage to make it right." Those simple words become the beginning of a transformation. The next morning, they decide to stop hiding behind excuses. They meet with people they have hurt, offer sincere apologies where needed, and begin repairing relationships one step at a time. Every honest conversation lifts a little more of the weight they have carried for so long. They discover that integrity is not proven by never making mistakes. It is proven by taking responsibility when mistakes are made and choosing a better path from that moment forward. Days pass, and life slowly begins to change. Fear no longer controls every decision. Peace quietly replaces anxiety. The character understands that freedom is not found by escaping accountability but by embracing honesty with humility and courage. They begin helping others avoid the same mistakes, encouraging them to speak truthfully, keep their promises, and treat people with fairness and compassion. One quiet evening, the same gentle voice from the dream returns in their thoughts. "My child, I did not call you to live in fear. I called you to walk in truth." A heart that chooses honesty over deception, compassion over pride, and hope over despair will always find the strength to begin again. The character smiles for the first time in many months. Looking at the sunrise on the horizon, they realize that the greatest rescue was never from an outside danger. It was from the fear that kept them from changing. From that day forward, they choose to live with integrity, seek forgiveness when they fail, extend grace to others, and build a future founded on truth instead of fear. In this fictional story, the urgent message was never about predicting tomorrow. It was about choosing today to become the person they were always capable of being. And that choice changed the rest of their life. My beloved child, Don't skip this fictional inspirational story because the morning after the dream becomes the beginning of the hardest journey the main character has ever faced. Stay till the end because the greatest battle is never against the world, it is against the fear of facing the truth. They wake before sunrise, unable to forget the words they heard in the dream. Every corner of the room is silent, yet the message continues echoing in their mind. It is not a voice demanding punishment. It is a reminder that every person reaches a moment when they must decide whether to keep running from their mistakes or begin walking toward honesty. The entire morning feels unusually heavy. As they prepare for work, they notice how easily people hide behind smiles while carrying burdens no one else can see. They realize they have been doing the same thing for a long time. Outwardly, everything appears normal. Inwardly, unanswered questions continue growing louder. They begin remembering every opportunity they had to tell the truth but chose silence instead. Every delayed apology. Every difficult conversation they avoided. Every moment they convinced themselves that tomorrow would be a better day to make things right. In this fictional story, they finally understand that tomorrow can become an excuse that lasts for years. Listen carefully, because this changes everything. During the afternoon they meet an elderly stranger while waiting at a small cafe. The stranger smiles kindly and says something unexpected. The strongest people I've ever met weren't those who never failed. They were the ones who found the courage to admit when they were wrong. The words seem simple, yet they remain in the character's heart long after the conversation ends. Walking home, they realize that courage is not always dramatic. Sometimes courage is making one difficult phone call, admitting one painful truth, or taking the first step toward repairing something broken. That evening they unlock an old drawer filled with forgotten letters, unfinished journal pages, and photographs from another season of life. Every page reminds them that people can change if they are willing to be honest with themselves. Slowly, they begin writing a list of everyone they still need to speak with. Not because they expect forgiveness, but because they finally understand that sincerity matters even when outcomes remain uncertain. Hours pass as they reflect on the kind of person they truly want to become. They whisper quietly, "I cannot rewrite yesterday, but I can decide who I will be tomorrow." Those words bring an unexpected sense of peace. Over the following days, they begin taking small but meaningful steps. They keep promises they once ignored. They speak truthfully even when it is uncomfortable. They stop blaming circumstances for every mistake and begin accepting responsibility for their own choices. None of these changes happen overnight, but each one makes their heart feel lighter than the day before. Late one evening, while watching the sunset from a quiet hillside, they remember the dream once again. This time, instead of feeling fear, they feel gratitude. They understand that the message was never meant to predict their future. It was meant to awaken their conscience before regret became permanent. As the final light disappears beyond the horizon, they close their eyes and take a deep breath. For the first time in years, they are no longer afraid of the truth. They are ready to let it change their life. My beloved child, don't skip this fictional inspirational story because tonight the journey reaches a point where every choice begins to carry greater meaning. Stay till the end because this chapter is about discovering that true freedom begins the moment a person stops hiding from the truth. Several days have passed since the unforgettable dream, and although life around the main character looks exactly the same, something inside them has changed completely. They no longer wake up searching for signs or wondering what the future might bring. Instead, they wake up asking themselves one simple question. Am I living today with honesty, courage, and integrity? That question quietly begins transforming every part of their life. They arrive at work earlier than usual, determined to approach the day differently. Instead of avoiding difficult conversations, they choose openness. Instead of pretending everything is perfect, they admit when they need help. To their surprise, people respond with understanding rather than judgment. In this fictional story, they discover that honesty often creates stronger relationships than pretending to have everything under control. Listen carefully, because this changes everything. That afternoon, they receive an unexpected phone call from someone they have not spoken to in years. The conversation begins awkwardly, filled with long silences and unfinished sentences. Finally, the other person says, "I've carried resentment for a long time, but I don't want to carry it anymore." Those words deeply move the main character. They realize that healing is rarely about changing the past. It is about changing what we choose to carry into the future. For more than an hour, they speak openly about misunderstandings, disappointments, and the mistakes both of them made. There are no excuses. No attempts to shift blame. Only honesty. Only listening. Only the shared hope that both people can leave the conversation lighter than they entered it. When the call ends, the character notices something remarkable. The weight they had carried for years feels smaller. Not because every problem has disappeared, but because truth has finally been given room to breathe. That evening they return home and open their journal once again. Every previous page reminds them how frightened they once were of facing reality. Now they realize that fear loses its power whenever truth is welcomed with humility. They slowly begin writing another entry. Today I learned that the greatest prison is not failure. It is refusing to grow because we are afraid of admitting we were wrong. Every honest conversation opens a door that pride keeps locked. As they finish writing, rain begins falling gently outside the window. They stand watching the quiet streets, thinking about how storms always pass, leaving the air cleaner than before. In this fictional story, they understand that difficult seasons often prepare people for their greatest transformation. Just before going to bed, they remember the compassionate voice from the dream one final time. Not as a warning. Not as a prediction. But as a reminder. Walk in truth, even when it is difficult. Choose integrity, even when no one is watching. Let compassion guide your heart, and never believe that it is too late to become the person you were created to be. The character closes their eyes with a peaceful smile. Tomorrow is still unknown. But for the first time in many years, they are no longer afraid of whatever tomorrow may bring. Because they have learned that a life built on honesty, responsibility, forgiveness, and hope is stronger than fear will ever be. My beloved child, don't skip this fictional inspirational story because the journey is reaching its most important turning point. Stay till the end because today the main character discovers that redemption is not a single moment, it is a path walked one honest step at a time. Weeks have now passed since the mysterious dream. The fear that once filled every morning has slowly disappeared, replaced by something far more powerful: peace. Not because life has become perfect, but because they have stopped hiding from themselves. Every sunrise now feels like another opportunity to choose integrity over excuses, compassion over pride, and truth over fear. One afternoon, while walking through the city, they unexpectedly meet someone from their past. Years ago, their friendship ended because of misunderstandings that neither of them had the courage to address. For a brief moment, both of them hesitate. It would be easy to smile politely and continue walking. But in this fictional story, they remember every lesson the dream has taught them. Instead of avoiding the conversation, they take the first step forward. "Can we talk?" Those 3 words become the beginning of something neither of them expected. They sit together on a quiet park bench and begin speaking honestly for the first time in years. They admit where fear influenced their decisions, where silence created unnecessary distance, and where pride prevented simple apologies. There is no attempt to rewrite history. There is only a sincere desire to understand one another. Listen carefully, because this changes everything. As the conversation continues, both realize that many of the wounds they carried were not caused by hatred. They were caused by assumptions that were never questioned. By conversations that never happened. By truths that remained unspoken. When they finally stand to leave, the friendship is not magically restored overnight. But something even more valuable has returned. Respect. Understanding. Peace. Walking home beneath the evening sky, the main character notices how much lighter every step feels. They no longer measure success by what people think of them. They measure it by whether they can honestly look in the mirror each night with a clear conscience. That realization becomes one of the greatest gifts of the entire journey. Later that evening, they open their journal and slowly turn back to the very first page. They smile as they remember the frightened person who wrote those early entries. Then they turn to a blank page and write. Today I discovered that redemption begins the moment we stop defending our mistakes and start learning from them. Forgiveness cannot erase yesterday, but it can transform tomorrow. Every truthful step forward is stronger than 1,000 fearful steps backward. They gently close the journal and place it beside the window. Outside, rain clouds begin moving away, revealing a sky filled with stars. Looking upward, they quietly whisper, "Thank you for giving me another chance to become a better person." The peaceful silence that follows is enough. No dramatic signs. No mysterious voices. Only the quiet confidence of someone who finally understands that hope grows wherever honesty is allowed to live. As the night comes to an end, they realize the dream was never about predicting disaster. It was about preventing a life wasted in fear, pride, and regret. Instead, it became the beginning of a journey toward truth, healing, forgiveness, and lasting peace. And deep inside, they know the final chapter will not be remembered because of fear. It will be remembered because of hope. My beloved child, don't skip this fictional inspirational story because the journey is almost complete, and today every lesson begins to reveal its true purpose. Stay till the end because this chapter is not about fear. It is about discovering the freedom that comes from living with truth. Several months have passed since the dream that changed everything. The main character no longer looks over their shoulder wondering what tomorrow might bring. Instead, they wake each morning with a quiet determination to live honestly, to keep their promises, and to treat every person with fairness and compassion. In this fictional story, the greatest transformation has happened where no one else can see it, inside the heart. One morning, while walking through the town, they notice someone sitting alone on a bench with tears in their eyes. People pass by without stopping, each busy with their own responsibilities. For a moment, the character almost continues walking as well. Then they remember the countless opportunities they were given to change their own life because someone chose kindness over judgment. They walk over, sit beside the stranger, and simply ask, "Are you all right?" Those 3 words begin a conversation that lasts for nearly an hour. The stranger explains they are overwhelmed by guilt over mistakes they cannot change and fear they have ruined every chance for a better future. Quietly, the main character shares their own journey, not every detail, but enough to offer hope. "I once believed my past would define me forever. Then I learned that while we cannot erase yesterday, we can decide what kind of person we become today." The stranger listens carefully, and for the first time that day, a small smile appears. Listen carefully, because this changes everything. The character suddenly realizes that every difficult season they experienced prepared them to encourage someone else. Their pain was not wasted. Their lessons were not meaningless. Every moment of honesty, every apology, every act of courage had quietly shaped them into someone capable of helping another person find hope. That evening, they return home and once again open the journal that has accompanied them throughout this journey. Reading the earliest pages, they barely recognize the frightened person who wrote them. Fear has been replaced by peace. Shame has been replaced by humility. Confusion has been replaced by wisdom. On a fresh page, they slowly write, "Today I learned that true freedom is not pretending I have never failed. True freedom is knowing I no longer have to hide from my mistakes because I have chosen to learn from them. Every honest decision creates a future that fear could never build." As they finish writing, they gently close the journal and place it back on the shelf. Looking through the window, they watch the sun slowly disappear beyond the horizon. The sky glows with warm shades of gold and orange, reminding them that every sunset is also a promise that another sunrise will come. Standing quietly, they whisper, "Thank you for never giving up on me, even when I almost gave up on myself." A deep sense of gratitude fills the room. In this fictional story, they finally understand that the greatest rescue was never from an outside event. It was from becoming trapped by guilt, fear, and hopelessness. Now those chains are gone. Their heart is lighter. Their conscience is clear. Their future is filled with purpose. And as they step into another new day, they carry one unshakable truth with them. A life built on honesty, responsibility, forgiveness, and hope will always shine brighter than a life controlled by fear. The final chapter is now very close, and it will reveal that the greatest victory was never escaping consequences, it was becoming the person they were always meant to be. My beloved child, don't skip this fictional inspirational story because this is the final chapter where every question finds its answer and every lesson reveals its purpose. Stay till the end because the greatest miracle was never about escaping fear, it was about becoming a new person. 1 year has now passed since that unforgettable dream. Looking back, the main character can hardly recognize the person they once were. They remember the sleepless nights, the heavy guilt, the endless worry, and the fear of facing the truth. Yet today, those burdens no longer define them. They have been replaced by honesty, humility, compassion, and a quiet confidence that no circumstance can take away. As the morning sun rises, they walk through the same streets where their journey first began. Everything looks familiar, yet everything feels different. Friends greet them warmly. Neighbors smile as they pass by. People who once knew them only through their mistakes now know them through their character. In this fictional story, they discover that the strongest reputation is not built by pretending to be perfect. It is built by consistently choosing what is right, even after making mistakes. Listen carefully, because this changes everything. During a community gathering, an elderly teacher who has watched their journey quietly stands and says, "Many people believe strength means never falling. But true strength is standing back up with honesty, accepting responsibility, and helping others find hope. That is the kind of strength that changes lives." The words fill the room with silence. Then, one by one, people begin applauding, not because the main character is flawless, but because they chose growth instead of excuses. Later that evening, they return home and take the old journal from the shelf one final time. They slowly read every page, remembering each lesson, each difficult decision, and each moment that brought them closer to becoming the person they were meant to be. On the final page, they write, "I have learned that truth may be difficult, but it always leads to freedom. Forgiveness may take time, but it always heals the heart. Hope is never lost for the person who chooses integrity, and every new day is another opportunity to become better than yesterday." They gently close the journal. This time. Not because the story is over, but because a new chapter of life is beginning. Stepping outside, they watch the stars appear one by one across the peaceful night sky. A gentle breeze reminds them how far they have come. The fear that once controlled every thought has completely disappeared. In its place is peace. In its place is purpose. In its place is hope. They quietly whisper, "Thank you for guiding me toward truth instead of letting me remain trapped by fear. Thank you for giving me the courage to change when I needed it most." A deep sense of gratitude fills their heart. In this fictional story, they finally understand that the greatest rescue was never from an event they feared. It was from the life they might have lived if they had ignored their conscience. From that day forward, they become a source of encouragement to others, reminding everyone they meet that no mistake is too great to learn from, no failure is too final to recover from, and no person is beyond the possibility of change. Their life becomes a testimony that honesty is stronger than deception, humility is stronger than pride, forgiveness is stronger than resentment, and hope is stronger than fear. As the first light of a new dawn appears on the horizon, they smile with complete peace, knowing that the future no longer frightens them. It welcomes them. Because the greatest victory was never avoiding hardship. It was becoming a person whose heart is filled with truth, whose life is guided by integrity, and whose future is built on faith, wisdom, compassion, and hope.